Hey, what is going on, guys? This is SMEB Reviews, and today we're going to be taking a look at the new album from AJR titled Neotheater. Let's get to it. Okay, up front, I will be honest and say that I know that this band is one that is easy to take shots at, and one that everyone loves to hate. And I didn't go into this album hoping to hate it. I really didn't. I haven't liked their output in the past, but I wanted to be optimistic and hope that this would be good. And I know that a lot of people are going to be targeting this album, and this is an album that is definitely going to be on a lot of worst of the year lists. So I hate to just come in and act like I'm just hating on them because they're a popular band to hate. But I'll be upfront and say, yeah, it kind of deserves it here. Neotheater is really just a mess all around. It has some moments that maybe show some resemblance of having some quality, and I think that in those moments I sometimes get even more frustrated because it shows that there might be some potential here. I mean, they have a unique sound, I'm not going to deny that. Yeah, it's got a lot of problems, the production's sloppy, and some of the instruments are just so overproduced, it really can kill what they sound like. They have a really big emphasis on brass and horns, and all of that just can be very ear grating at times, and I totally get that those are problems, but honestly, there are times that there's some potential here and some unique ideas, because yeah, it's still a different sound. They're not utilizing it correctly, but it's different, and I'll recognize that. But at the end of the day, so many of these songs just fall apart. And I think a lot of the reason that they fall apart is, production's one of them, but I think some of the bigger problems in the lyrics. And honestly, I get the appeal. They have that appeal that Jon Bellion has in, like, that that the songs are supposed to be really deep, they're kind of quirky and goofy, also kind of in the same vein of like 21 Pilots. I get the appeal, but in practice, AJR is one of the worst representations of this sort of music, because while I didn't love Jon Bellion's work, or even a lot of 21 Pilots' work, I can recognize and at least did not hate it, whereas here, it just does not come together well at all. And I think one of the biggest problems is how pretentious they can come across. They come across like they have this moral superiority, and that everything that they know is better than the general society. And, you know, it's not bad to criticize society as a whole, but usually you have to kind of self-deprecate yourself and humanize yourself, whereas they don't necessarily do this at any point. And I think one of the best examples of this is Birthday Party, a song where it's pretty much about being born, and then this child comes out, and he's talking about how great life is going to be, kind of in a very naive way. And I get what they were trying to do. Obviously, that's the joke. It's that this child has all these thoughts, and I get it. It's a joke. But really, it just comes across as very pretentious, because they talk about Instagram and how fun it'll be and how it'll never cause any problems, and act like they know better. And so it just keeps coming across as though they are higher. They talk about how their parents will always stay in love, and how I bet our country's nice to immigrants, and it's a political statement, and I'm not, as I always say, I like to remain pretty politically neutral, so I'm not going to say whether I agree or disagree with the stances on immigration in the current U.S. Climate, but I will say that it's ultimately, it comes across as though they just seem to have such a superiority to everyone around them. They're not necessarily criticizing anyone, they're criticizing the country, and how they know better. They know that we need to be nicer to immigrants, but the whole country is below them because they haven't figured that out yet. It's that kind of logic that really just gets under my skin, and that's what comes across in a lot of these songs. Birthday Party is genuinely probably my worst song, or the worst song on this album, as it also has some really terribly pitch-shifted vocals, which, when does that ever work? When do pitch-shifted vocals really come across and people go, wow, I really love this? It's a really ear-grating song, and I do dislike it a lot. Definitely the worst song on this album. But the bad songs just keep on coming. Dear Winter is a song that I could see actually having potential, being a song that has a lot of substance to it, because it's them singing to a future daughter, that one that hasn't been born, and honestly, the wife hasn't even been met yet, the mother hasn't been met yet. But it's just the thought that one day there will be a child, and that's something that he looks forward to. So I totally get how this song could work. It's actually a fairly sweet sentiment, and I do like it. But throughout the song, it just becomes increasingly more about the narrator's perspective. It stops being as much about how excited he is for his daughter, and more like how life has kind of messed him up and how unlucky he is because he hasn't found the mom yet. And it kind of just becomes him whining about it rather than just saying that he hopes to have this daughter someday. And then we have a song like Beats, which is talking about Beats, the headphone brand, and talking about how they've sponsored like a lot of big pop hits, and they wonder if Beats would pay them for a sponsor. It's talking about the commercialism of music, and it's a sponsorship, like condemning sponsorships. But ultimately, again, it comes down to they're acting like they are at this moral high ground because they haven't taken that route. And it just comes across as very pretentious again. And that's, like I said, an overwhelming problem with this band. And not to mention, with a sponsorship like Beats, it's not like the artist is necessarily selling out their style or their artistic freedom, more in they just put product placement in. It's not like, I mean, you can disagree with that sentiment, but ultimately, an artist like Lady Gaga, who's done product placement of Beats in her music video, it's not like she ditched her entire integrity as an artist just to talk about Beats. No, it was just product placement, and I don't know, that's capitalism. Disagree with capitalism all you want, or agree with it doesn't really matter, but ultimately that's how it works, and I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with the fact that that's a thing that happens, but they take this, again, high ground, that they are better than that, and kind of just seem to be indulging in the fact that they are slightly alternative. And that's another thing that comes across in this album, is that they really want to come across as relatable. They talk about, and Don't Throw Out My Legos, they talk about the moving out and leaving childhood, like your childhood home. Again, I get the sentiment, but ultimately it just comes across as them trying to be relatable. They know their target demographic is probably teens, and so they're talking about that big change that a lot of teens will go through, like going off to college or entering the workforce or something. And it continues. I mean, a lot of these songs sound kind of childish, and it almost sounds like they're talking down to their audience. Again, another example of the pretentiousness. But just in the way that they word things and how relatable they try to be, it almost just sounds like they're trying to dumb themselves down for what they believe is their target audience, even though their target audience is probably much more intelligent than they're giving them credit for. Obviously, I have a lot of problems, and they just keep coming. Like I said, the production's way overcrowded. There is so much that happens in each individual song, with random chirps and blips of random synthesizers or noises that just don't fit, and it's way too overcrowded. Not to mention that the instrumentation can be really confusing at times. You can go from a chorus full of horns to really like hip-hoppy sort of verse, and it just goes back and forth, and it's really tonally jarring. Okay, I'm going to give credit to maybe 2 songs on here. Turning Out Part 2, good song. It's not amazing, but it's pretty much just about the narrator coming to terms with he may not be in love with the person he's with, and just being in love with the thought of them. It's a fine song. It's not bad at all. It's passable completely. If this was the worst song on the album, totally different story. This would be it's a fine song. But then we the other song that I want to talk about is Karma. And Karma has its problems. I won't say that it doesn't, because the narrator does come across as very entitled. It comes because he's pretty much talking to like a therapist and saying that he's been good, he's done good deeds and worked hard. So why is he not getting paid back for this? And it comes across as entitled. But at the end of the day, this is something just about everyone does. And that's not necessarily a selfish thing. It's a very human emotion to feel, and that you work hard, and Sometimes you just feel like you need your break, and that's a very humanizing moment. I don't know. It's one that I could stand. I could see a lot of people hating it. I'm going to give it a pass at least because it's not awful. There are a lot of bad songs on this album. Bad Days, another terrible song with an awful horn solo. And there's so many weak moments on here. It's such a terribly written and executed album as a whole. I didn't want to come into this album just hating on AJR, but unfortunately that's just what happened. It's how this album was written, and I can't do anything else. So, rating time. If it wasn't for Turning Out Part 2 and maybe Karma, this album would probably hit almost a 0, if not a 0. I'm not kidding. This album just is awful all around. Those songs pull it up a little bit. I'll give them a little credit, being as if that's 2 of the 12 songs. So I'll give it a little credit. So we're going to give this album at the end of the day a 1.5 out of 10. But what did you guys think of this album? Please let me know down below. I know every critic, so many people are going to hate on this album. I don't want to be adding to that. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents and provide hopefully some new commentary and not copy a lot of the thoughts that other people have had. I hope that you enjoyed this review and I added something to the conversation, because truly, this was a terrible album and I didn't want to be hating on it, but I had no choice. It just was bad. But, like I said, what did you guys think? Please let me know. Besides that, thank you guys so much for watching this video. It really does mean a lot to me. And I'll see you guys later.